Hi, Hi, everyone. My name is Katie O'Neill. I'm a speech language pathologist and I work at Boston Children's Hospital in the Augmentative Communication Program. And Aubrey asked me to join her today and talk about a little bit about what we do in terms of our patients who use augmentative communication or AAC, who we see who are also students at in Boston Public. So a little bit about our coordination. It's nice to be here.
Thank you. So I'm going to start a little bit today talking a little bit about assistive technology within the Boston Public Schools, how we consider assistive technology for our students who are on IEPs and 504s. I am hoping you'll have a better understanding about what assistive technology is and how it can support your students both at school and at home. And for anybody who has students who are still virtually learning, we're going to talk a little bit about how assistive technology can help with that as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about our process. We use something called the SET framework. It is recommended by DESE to guide our recommendations for assistive technology and how we use that to best, how we try to use that to make decisions for our students. And how that feeds into what we call feature matching and determining what is best matched for our students in the school. And then how we trial assistive technology in the schools and how we figure out if the suggestions and recommendations that we made are working and how we make changes when they're not. So to start out, assistive technology is an umbrella term, and it is any product, system, or piece of equipment that helps a student access. So when we're thinking about it in the schools, we're thinking about it for accessing the curriculum. How are our students accessing the curriculum? What I'm talking about today falls under two categories, augmentative and alternative communication, and that's what Katie was talking about before. So for our students who have trouble communicating verbally all the time, sometimes in one situation, but not another, they might use something called augmentative and alternative communication. And for our students who have print-based disabilities, so reading, writing, executive function, I'm going to talk about assistive technology. So assistive technology is an umbrella term, but it also has these two categories underneath it of AAC, or augmentative and alternative communication, or AT and assistive technology. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education does have a lot of information in their guidelines about assistive technology. They started referencing it in around 1997 after IDEA came out. And we, as a school system, need to consider assistive technology at every special education meeting. So at every IEP or 504 meeting, assistive technology needs to be considered. What considered means is how is the student accessing the curriculum? So how are we thinking about how the student is accessing? It could be through accommodations. It could be through the services they're receiving, the special ed services that they're receiving in the classroom and out of the classroom. It could be through any sort of accommodations they're receiving through a 504. We could be considering their assistive technology needs. Or it could be an actual piece of equipment that they need in order to access the curriculum. Those are all considered assistive technology considerations within an IEP. In Boston, we do this in two ways. One, the school-based IEP teams are often considering assistive technology in their IEP meetings. They're talking about accommodations that the student needs. They're talking about services that the student might need. And they're talking about how the disability is affecting their access to the curriculum. When a student requires something a little bit more, so we might need to consider a different piece of technology, whether it's low tech or high tech, or a student requires some sort of specialized communication system. We have a team of people in Boston that are related service providers and teachers can call. Currently, we are 10 people strong. And we come out and we work with the school-based team and the families to determine what is best for that student in that situation. Oftentimes the situation may change and we need to come back again and reconsider, because as the child grows and becomes an adult, we need to make different considerations. What Desi says is that when we're thinking about AT, it's important to keep in mind that it's not just about buying a piece of equipment. Okay, we need to really think about what it is that the student cannot do. What is it that is hard for them in this moment? And what can we provide to make that easier for them? AT is about going around something that is difficult for a student because of a disability and making it easier for them. So it's not just about saying, oh, well, here's the latest piece of technology that I need to buy for them. We have to look at what's hard and why is it hard and what can we do to make it easier for them. Desi also recommends that we consider the range of devices from low to high tech. So if you have somebody from the assistive technology team who comes to work with your child, you will see us talk about low tech, mid tech, and high tech supports that we've looked into and talked about and worked with, because we need to consider all of those things when we are working with a student, because sometimes the simplest solution might be the best. Sometimes we need to make it more complicated because the simple solution that we tried isn't working. So we need to look at the full range when we come out to see a student. This line of instructional technology and assistive technology has become very blurred, especially over the last few years, because everybody had to have technology in order to access school over the last couple of years. And this became even more complicated for our students with special needs. So the strict definition is instructional technology is something that is provided by the school that provides an enhancement to the curriculum. It's something we call universal design for learning. I'm sorry, I see a couple of people raising their hands, but I can't see who it is. I can only see that the hands are raised. Roxy, do you want me to stop and have them?
So what I will ask is that if you have a question for the speaker, we'll wait for a break point. If we're having any challenges, because I know they're dealing with a problem in the French room, not being able to hear clearly. If it's an interpretation, should please put it in the chat, and in the background, we're working on it to resolve it for you.
Okay, Roxy, just yell out if you need me to stop, okay?
Yes.
Aubrey, don't stop, but do slow down a little bit, if you don't mind.
Thank you. So when we are thinking about instructional technology, these are pieces of technology that are provided by the school that are what we call universal design for learning. So they are ways that we change the input of the curriculum as well as the output of the curriculum to better meet the needs of diverse learners. It's for everyone, not just students with special needs, not just students on IEPs and 504s. It is for everyone. So when Boston had their initiative to provide Chromebooks for some of our older students, this would fall under instructional technology. It went to everyone. Assistive technology is specific for students on IEPs and 504s. They cannot access the curriculum without it, okay? It is specific to them, it is individualized to them, and it is in their IEP and 504 and specialized. Now, it may be some of the same things that we're providing as a universal design for other students, but it is specialized to them and they are required to have it. So how do we do
Aubrey,
this?
I just want to make sure you know that one of our interpreters has asked to just slow down just a little bit more, please.
Okay, I will try. Hold on, my screen froze for a second. Give me 1 second here. Okay. So when we are thinking about assistive technology, it's an ever-changing and ever-growing process. We don't start at one point and move linearly across. It's a circle, and we are always changing and we are always adapting because our students are always changing and always adapting. Their environments are always changing and always adapting. But the things that we use to figure this out is something called the SET framework. And I'm going to explain that a little bit more specifically in the next couple of slides. But we use the SET framework and we use the WADI checklist, which I will also explain, to guide information when we make recommendations for consultations and trials of systems. And we try them, and we try them for an extended period of time, and then we come back and we look again. Okay, the environment's different. The student moved to another classroom. So we need to consider something different. And then we look at and we keep going around until we have a good fit. And then our students get older. And so we have to keep trying and keep making sure we're making adjustments to the process and to the equipment to make sure it keeps up with the needs of our students. In addition, we're dealing with technology, which is always changing and always improving. So as new things come out, we need to make adjustments as well. So what does SET stand for? The SET framework stands for the student, the environment, the tasks, and the tools. It's not a standardized test. We don't have a standardized test for assistive technology. It's a framework, and it helps make recommendations, and it helps guide our decision-making process. This is what's recommended by DESE right now. It was developed by Joy Zabala, and basically what we're trying to determine is it possible that the student will not make effective progress without this piece of technology? If they don't have it, are they not going to make progress? Because that's always what we're looking for. We want them to be making progress towards their educational goals, and as they get older, towards their vocational and life goals. Okay. So the student is, we look at the background. Who is this student? Who are they as a learner? Who are they at home? Who are they at school? And what is it about this student that is affecting their progress? What about their disability is affecting their ability to access the curriculum? And what are their strengths? What can we draw upon when we're picking technology for them to utilize in the school? The environment is, what kind of classroom are they in? Where are they out in the community? What are they doing during the day? How many people are they around? Who do they have to communicate with? Who are they interacting with about their schoolwork? Who are they interacting with at home? So what environment is this student in? And then most importantly, what are they being asked to do that they can't? My team doesn't get called for assistive technology when the student is doing great and they're accessing the curriculum as they should. There's always something that is not going the way that we want it to. So what is it? What's tripping them up? What barriers are there? Is it every writing task, or is it just certain writing tasks they're being asked to do? Is it every time they're being asked to read something, or is it when it's presented in a certain way? So what is it that's tripping them up? And then we come in with different tools to try to figure out what helps them access these tasks. So once we've looked at the student, the environment, and the tasks, we're taking features from each of those. Okay? So we're looking at the features of the student, the features of the environment, and the features of the tasks that are hard. And we're trying to match them to the features of the tools that we have. We're trying to make that best match so that the student can learn to use and then successfully implement that tool in the educational environment. So we take all this information and we put it together and we try all different things so that we can figure out what is going to best support the student. And then we make recommendations and we try it. Because even though I'd like to say we get it right 100% of the time, we don't. Sometimes we miss something, or something changes, or what we think is going to work doesn't, or we need more. So we try it and we have the team gather data around the device use, whatever it may be, communication book, a switch, an eye gaze device. We gather data because we want to make sure that what we've recommended is working and is going to continue to work and grow with the student in the long term. Okay, so when you get your student's IEP or 504 and you know there's going to be AT in it, and you see these weird, what you think is going to be a computer doesn't come out that way. We describe the features of the device that the student needs in the IEP. And we do this for a couple of different reasons. Remember, I mentioned technology changes a lot, and we don't, if something new comes out, we like to be able to make sure we can update when we need to. So if we've recommended a Chromebook or a laptop or a MacBook, we're going to call it a portable word processor with internet capabilities. We're also going to describe what it is on that the student needs. So it might be that they need speech recognition software, or they might need audiobooks, whatever it is, we're going to describe it very specifically in the IEP. If we have a student who's using an iPad for AT, so not a communication device, but for reading and writing, it's called a portable touchscreen tablet with internet capabilities. We do not have anybody using Fortes or Neos right now. This is a bit of outdated technology, but I wanted you to have the information. They used to be called portable word processors. We don't use them anymore. They're difficult to navigate and they're not useful. If you have a student who has AAC or augmentative communication, and they're using a high-tech device, an iPad, it's going to be called a dynamic display device with speech generating software. Now, some of our students have devices that have come from Children's or have come through their insurance, and we name that specifically in the IEP as well. We say that it is a family provided or an insurance provided, because we want to make sure that it's very clear that where it came from and how it's being used. Okay. We do name the application that they are currently using in the IEP. And here's why. When I get an out-of-district IEP for a student and it says they're using a speech generating device, I don't necessarily know what app they need. So it's helpful to know which app they're using. If we are using a GoTalk, we call it a multi-cell static display voice output device. That was a lot. Another reason that we often—
Can you say that again? I am so sorry.
Multi-cell static display voice output device. Did you get it? Another reason we describe it like this is right now, GoTalk 9s, so ones with 9 buttons, are back ordered for 6 months. So if I put the word GoTalk in an IEP and I couldn't order it, we'd have a problem. Your student wouldn't have the communication device that they need. There are other companies that make these, so they're just called different things. So by putting this description in, I'm able to order the device from a different company to make sure that your student has what they need when they need it.
And Aubrey, can I just interrupt for one moment? One, I want to give a moment for our interpreters to catch their breath. Another thing too is that one of the feedback comments too is about utilizing a little bit more friendly parent language. Instead of this, there is shop talk within, maybe when you're presenting to the teachers and things like that. But just a note of paying attention to the audience too while you're speaking. So thank you so much.
Yes, I realize this is very technical, but these are the words that would be in your student's IEP. And I'm going to send this presentation. I didn't send it ahead of time because I wanted to be able to put your specific questions, put information in before it went out to you, so you would have those answers. So yes, you're correct. These are very, very technical, but this is what would be in your student's IEP. Okay. We have some students who use switches. This is what it would be called. And we have many students who use communication books. Okay, so if you think your student might need AT, you need to start with your school-based team, okay? The teacher, a related service provider, speech therapist, OT, PT, or the coordinator of special education, your COS, okay? Remember, the device is not the goal. The tool, the access is the goal. So when you're talking to them, it helps us to know what you think is hard for your student right now so that we can make sure we're bringing the right things. Okay. I'm gonna move to AT, so assistive technology. So what I'm talking about right now is print-based disabilities, okay? These are our students who have difficulty reading, writing, organization. A lot of times our students with visual impairments would fall under this print-based disability, okay? So it's any student who has difficulty accessing printed materials. within the curriculum. Okay. Some examples of things we might do is Braille for a student. We might enlarge the print. We might provide text auditorily. And I'm going to speak a little bit more specifically about different ways that we do that. But what I'm talking about right now is students who have trouble with print. Okay. So if a student is having trouble reading, a student might be diagnosed with something with dyslexia, right? Or another reading-based disability. They're having trouble learning to read. What I'm talking about is not the technology that we use to teach them to read, okay? I'm talking about the technology that we use to have them gain access to the information without reading it, okay? So your students may still be receiving intervention around reading, right? They may be receiving rules-based reading intervention. This is not that, okay? This is for our students who need to access world history, but they're not reading on the same grade level as their peers, okay? So we might recommend something called text to speech. And what that means is the system, whatever the system is, reads the print to them. So information is presented digitally and it is read to them. All students in Boston Public Schools have access to Read and Write for Google. Every Chromebook in Boston has it already on it, okay? What my team does is make specific recommendations about which pieces of that are most accessible to a student, what they need. And Read and Write for Google does a really great job reading most printed material, okay? Most things presented digitally will be read by Read and Write for Google. The student can wear headphones, or if it's in a smaller setting, they can just listen on the computer. It also will highlight the words as it's being read. And I'll talk about some of the other features in a bit because it does a lot of other things. If a student needs access to a textbook or a literacy book, if they're reading, say, Romeo and Juliet, Bookshare is a digital library of accessible materials. So everything is presented auditorily in the ears, so you can listen to it. Bookshare has an ever-growing number of books. And if something's not on there, we can call them and they will add it. The student needs an individual account, but all they need is a designation of a print-based disability. So any disability that's affecting their ability to read or write, they can have an account for Bookshare, okay? Any special education person or parent can sign them up on Bookshare. It can be done by anybody. It is it's a computer voice that does the reading. It's not super digital. It's pretty good. They've updated their voices, but it is computer read, okay? Learning Ally is another digital library of accessible books, but it's human read. So they're people, and you can select the gender and the speed and all of those things in Learning Ally, but it's human read. Because of that, there's less options of books, and it takes longer for us to get the books on there, but it is another option for students. And then Sora or Overdrive allows you to borrow books from a school library or a public library and listen to them as well. So when a student has trouble writing, okay, for whatever reason, it can be a physical disability, meaning their hands, they have trouble writing because of their hands. It could be that they have trouble coming up with the ideas. It could be that they have trouble getting, they have great ideas and they can't get them on paper. For whatever reason, if they have trouble writing, we have a bunch of different accessible things that we look at. The first one is, again, Read and Write for Google Chrome. And we may explore things like speech recognition. What that means is you talk to the computer and it writes for you, sort of like speech to text on your phone. We also often work with students to use word prediction. What that means is as you start typing or speaking, the computer makes an educated guess about what you are going to say, or what you are trying to write, and you can pick from a list of words. Okay. MOTA is a Chrome extension. Again, it's something that can be downloaded on your student's computer and it will stay there. And it allows you to use your voice to run your complete computer. You can run everything with just your voice. A little disclaimer, it is a little bit glitchy sometimes. It gets stuck, but we're working on that too. And then Mindomo is for graphic organizers and things for writing. Okay.
And I'm going to use that to just, oops.
Sorry.
That's okay. I just want to check in, just because for some reason, Armando, if you can hear me, if you can put something in the chat, our Cabo Verdean interpreter, we weren't hearing anything on that channel. And then I believe we read some comments that there were some concerns in the Spanish room also. So
I'm having a lot of trouble, Roxy, on my Zoom is glitching, and I don't know if I'm glitching when I'm talking, but like I'm going in and out.
So I didn't see you go in and out. On
Okay.
my end, you seem fine.
Okay, good.
If anyone else is having trouble with hearing her, just put it in the chat and let us know. But so far, you seem to be fine. Okay, Sharon, thumbs up. Okay, so everyone's able to hear you.
Okay.
I just wanted to give a moment to pause.
Yep.
And just catch our breath and give Yashi a chance to check in with some of the interpreters and different channels too.
Yep.
Just because
we will be switching to Katie as well fairly soon. That'll be another good place to take a break.
Right. And I think one of the things that, again, from the chat is also when you do your update of the version that can be for families, that a little bit more explanation of what some of these things are with maybe the hyperlinks and things like that.
These are all hyperlinked.
Okay, so perfect. I think that will be useful.
Yep, they're hyperlinked to directions on how to download them, as well as how to use them and where they can be found. I just was afraid I would run out of time. And I wanted to use many tools as I could.
Because people can can get to the information later on. And, as a recommendation in the chat, I think, a lot of times those visuals or those short summaries, so it's not as text heavy for some of our families. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons we ask for the presentations in advance to help our interpreters too. But our interpreters do need you to just slow down just a little bit.
I will try. It's hard for me to tell the pace with the glitching, so I will try to keep.
Aubrey, I think something that's helpful is I usually tell speakers, if you have to take a breath, our interpreters are probably needing you to take a pause for a second. That might be helpful. We appreciate you presenting today. It's just some of this language is technical and that might not be an area of expertise. So it's helpful to take a break for a second for our interpreters to be able to translate that language to our families.
Yep.
And honestly, besides the language, please remember that it's similar to our IEP meeting. Our families must understand the information being presented to them so they can make an informed choice. So even if it is in the English language, it must be in a user-friendly format that our families can access that information.
Yep.
But please.
So I will make sure that before I send this, I'm going to double check all the hyperlinks and then I will send it tonight.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Yeah, feel free to connect with SpEdPAC and myself, and we're happy to give you feedback if needed.
Thank you. Okay, so the last section of AT that I want to talk about is executive function. That is planning. How do I take something I know I need to do and get it done? Okay. Thinking about our high schoolers, I have a project I need to finish. I know what the end product is going to be, but how do I take the information I've learned in class and apply it to this project to get to my end product? A lot of our teachers are already using many of our executive function supports. So they're using checklists, they're using time management tools. I actually will say many of my students have taught me different time management tools that they prefer. And the ones I have listed here have come from students as the ones they prefer. I have many students who use Google Keep. It's a Post-it notes online. And they use that and have shown me many tips and tricks that are posted here. Okay. We have many students that use something called first then. First I do this, and then I do this. We use that a lot with many of our younger students. And it's a way for them to begin to use these higher level checklists. It's an early skill for using checklists. If you take nothing else away from today, I would say this link that I'm going to send out, and I'm actually going to, I don't know that my chat was not working, but I will try to put it in the chat at the end as well, are these Google tutorials. Okay. Google is a very accessible tool, and they are always working to improve it. And these videos are very helpful. I've learned a lot of things I didn't know from these videos. I do believe they are only in English, but we are working on getting them interpreted so that we can share them as well. Okay. Okay. I'm getting to you, Katie, I promise. I'm going to talk a little bit about augmentative communication and AAC. So these are for our students who have trouble communicating verbally, speaking. It doesn't mean they don't speak at all. Some of our students who use AAC do speak, but they need something else to support them. Some of our students who use AAC are hard to understand when they speak. So they might speak a lot, but they're difficult to understand, okay? When we're thinking about AAC, we need to remember why we communicate. We are social beings. We communicate to interact with other people. This has become really apparent as we've been doing this on Zoom, right? It's a lot harder to connect with people on Zoom, but the primary role of communication is social interaction. And that's really important to remember when we're trying to pick communication for students. All of our communication systems are based in core vocabulary. This is another one of those technical terms, but what it means is those little words that we use to say most of what we say. So 80% of what we say is core vocabulary. And they're little words that are can be used in lots of different ways, okay? Lots of different situations. Words like big and little and go, you can use those in any situation. There is core vocabulary in every language, but what the words are vary. So core vocabulary in English is different than what the core words are in Spanish or in Vietnamese.
Thank you very much. For your pace is much better. I just want to note that we do have Mr. McSwain at around 8 o'clock. So I want to make sure you're timing it with Katie too for the augmented. We have a lot of students that use these devices. So thank you.
Yep. So here, oops, I skipped a page. The other piece of our communication system is fringe. Those are very specific words to our students that motivate them or that they need to participate in the curriculum. In this, you'll see some examples. These are low tech. They have core and fringe. Okay, so these are all different examples of communication books that our students are currently using. Again, this is some examples of things you might see in the district. These are our mid-tech devices. And we do have many students using high-tech devices of different applications. Okay. Now, Katie's going to talk a little bit about children's as well as being a communication partner. I'm frozen. Go ahead, Katie.
I can go ahead. Will you click on to my next, or when you're unfrozen?
Yes, just give me a heads. Okay, there we go. Sorry.
That is okay. So again, I'm Katie. I'm here to talk about how our program at Boston Children's Hospital and your teachers and therapists and assistive technology team at BPS and the schools work together, and how we work on the same things, but slightly differently. I am also a parent of a child in BPS, so just that's a little extra piece about me as well. So I just wanted to let you all know that we have a program at Children's Hospital where we do these same type of evaluations that Aubrey was just talking about. So we see children in the hospital and we are looking to evaluate them for specifically augmentative and alternative communication tools. And again, that refers to tools that are outside of our body. So pictures, picture boards, books with pictures on them, devices with pictures and that can speak for us. All of those things are kind of outside tools that folks who have trouble using speech to communicate would use to support that. And we do evaluations for that in the hospital. This slide just gives a little bit of information. So I encourage folks to check out the link when you do get the resources at home. And we have some different programs, but I'm not going to go into those. Just the point is that all of us are doing those same type of evaluations. And we get referrals, meaning people come to us to get those evaluations if their doctor refers them to us, if their school team refers them to us, which sometimes happens when a child needs kind of something a little bit more than the school actually has on hand to try out. So Aubrey's team is doing these evaluations. They're bringing their tools to the students that are referred through the school system. And they have whatever equipment, whatever tools and pieces of thing, external tools they have to try out. And some kids might need something that they don't have access to, so they may refer to us because we have a large library of different tools. But we also have self-referrals. So if you are a family and you're thinking that your child needs an evaluation like this, you can call the phone number on this slide, and they will facilitate scheduling an appointment with us, which involves filling out a form that then our team reviews, and then we schedule. The question about the waiting list is a really good one, and our waiting list is typically about 6 months, although we do have a cancellation list and we have frequent cancellations. So I would say as long as 6 months at the current moment. I'm actually going to try not to monitor too much, but I do see this question here of what happens when the hospital and school don't agree on the accommodations. And that is something that I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to go on to the next slide and we'll talk a little bit about that. Hopefully. Are you clicking the slides? Sorry. It's not, it's frozen. I'm looking on my phone as well. Oh,
There, this one?
yes.
Okay. Sorry.
So if you do then get referred to us and we are seeing you for an AAC evaluation, augmentative communication evaluation, this is just a little info about what would happen. Your child would see someone like myself, a speech language pathologist, and they may or may not also see an occupational therapist, and that is depending on if there are any physical access. So if your child has a more complex physical disability in addition to their speech disability, they may also see an occupational therapist. We also really value school team and therapist input. So I think we're very much not usually at odds, I would say, or not always at odds with the school, although we are sometimes. And so I want to talk about that. But again, just a little bit about the visit. So at our visit, we often encourage families to sign consent forms so that we can foster that collaboration between ourselves and the schools. And even when we do disagree, we really try to have that consent signed, because the only real way to get the bridge from, the agreement between the two options is to communicate between the therapists. So that's something that we really try to do. Sometimes we don't have any communication with the school, and that's okay. But it does make things harder for just in terms of getting things going for your child, and in terms of us understanding the whole picture. And we always encourage families, I'm sorry, I'm going to slow down. I can tell that I'm going too fast. We always encourage families to bring anything that your child is using. So if your kid has a communication device, great, bring it with you, even if you hate it. If they have a communication book, bring it with you even if you hate it. If they're using just a couple of pictures at home that's different from what they have at school, bring it. Anything that they have for communication, we would like to see, because that's part of our evaluation. And the big difference between our team and what Aubrey's team is doing in the schools is that our evaluation is a lot more family focused. The legal mandate that the school team is following is looking at what does a child need in order to access the curriculum, the school curriculum. And what we are looking at is what does a child need in order to progress in their language and communication skills across all settings. So there's a little bit more of a focus of what's happening at home than the school, although both of us bleed into each other. The school cares about what's happening at home and how a child communicates at home. And we care about how a child's communicating at school. So it should overlap a lot, but I think the way we look at it is a little bit different, where I'm looking a lot more at the family side of things and what's happening at home. And then again, what happens in the visit is there's a lot of interview. There's a lot of questions that I'm asking families, questions I'm asking the children. Team collaboration, if we have a therapist with us, or if we're able to get information from a school therapist, we're observing what's happening, and then we're trying things. So hopefully that answers a little bit about what happens when we disagree, but I can get more into it a little bit later. You can go on to the next one, Aubrey. And actually, maybe you should go back, because what I'm going to next talk about, and I've always been told, and I feel this as a parent too, is that anytime you go to a meeting or a presentation, that you're probably just going to walk away remembering 3 things. And we're going to sit here and talk at you for a very long time. And so I have my idea of what the 3 things I'd like you to take away are, and that's related to how we hope that families will try things at home and how you can be kind of a smart communication partner at home. But I saw there were some questions here, and I'll be honest that I would hope that there's another moderator who can tell me what the questions are for me that maybe I could answer now that are about our clinic and how that works before I move on.
The only clinic specific one so far has been about insurance, and does insurance cover the evaluations?
Does insurance cover the evaluation? Yeah, I don't see the question itself.
And I said typically yes.
So I am keeping track of the questions in the chat so that we can get.
Great. So am I okay? Should I go ahead and move on? And yes, the insurance does typically cover the evaluation is the answer. Of course, all insurances are different. But again, if you call that phone number on our on my first slide, our intake administrative people, our admins, our schedulers, they do an insurance check. So they look at your benefits and they will let you know what those are before you get scheduled. Okay, so in terms of at-home communication partner strategies, again, I have 3 things that I want to talk about. And so these are the 3, this is just an overview. We're going to talk about modeling, or the technical jargon term is aided language input, which I'll explain in a moment. We're going to talk about being a smart communication partner, and then I'm going to give you some resources. So those are the 3 things. So this first slide talks about what's aided language input. Again, this is what after your evaluation with me, whatever I recommend, after your evaluation with Aubrey and her team, whatever is recommended, we are always recommending aided language input. This is how we progress through using an aided communication tool. And how kids learn is not really through direct teaching, like find the button for frog, where's frog? That's not really how we learn to communicate and how we learn to use language. The way we learn language is the way kids who learn to speak learn language, which is by listening to language, being spoken to, watching people talk to each other, and then trying it out ourselves after a lot of watching. So this was just a little visual. The first one is looking at the input on the left side of the screen. The input is what the child is hearing or seeing. So when the input is spoken language, I'm speaking English to my children, and I'm expecting them to speak English back to me. So the output that they're going to speak back on the right side of the screen is the same. It's spoken English to spoken English, or spoken Spanish to spoken Spanish, or ASL to ASL. When you look at that middle character, we're speaking to our children and then expecting them to use a different system to respond to us. So a communication device, any sort of communication device, or a communication book. We're going to call that aided language because they're using an aid or a tool. So when all that they're getting in, all they're hearing is speech and spoken language, can be very difficult and confusing for them to figure out how to translate that in their head and turn it into aided language, their expressive communication tool. So the way that we propose that we work with kids and help show them how they can use their communication systems is by we're not going to stop talking to them. Absolutely. But in addition to spoken language input, so in addition to hearing speech and spoken, whatever language we speak at home, we want to also give them input in the system that they're going to be using. So if that's a communication device with pictures on an iPad screen, for example, we want to be modeling that. And that's called aided language input. And on the next slide, I have a little bit of info about aided language input. So one of the things I wanted to say to everybody, I'm going to allow the ASL interpreters to switch. It looks like you're about to switch. Okay. So what I want everybody to know is that communication and language learning does not stop at the end of the school day. And like I said, kids are not only learning language through school tasks, through being taught, here's a new word, your word is go, and we're going to learn the word go. Certainly kids do learn words that way. They learn by being taught words, but the vast majority of language is learned through observing, through seeing other people use the language. So I just explained what aided language input is, but it's here as well. It's modeling the language, showing kids how to use language on their system. But what I mean by that is that we are using their system to model our own speech. So if I'm going to say to my daughter, it's time to go to bed, which it is right now, and I hope she's up there. I'm going to go on her communication system and say, time, go, bed. As I'm saying, it's time to go to bed. And I'm telling her that. She's not telling me that. She wouldn't like to tell me that, but I'm telling her that. It does sometimes feel awkward at first. It should feel awkward. You're using something new. And a lot of parents come to me and say, you know, we don't use their device at home because it just doesn't feel right. And I understand that because these are families who have been figuring out a way to communicate with their child who's not speaking very well or not speaking at all for years. And you have a system, you figured it out. You've learned the textbook of your child and you are the PhD, you're the expert in your child. And so it's hard to kind of teach this and it feels a little weird, but you know, I just like to tell people it's going to feel a little weird, but it's the overarching goal to get towards more independence. Involves a little awkwardness at first. And another point that's important is just that you're not the therapist. So this at home is supposed to be fun. We're not doing quizzing. We are just, we're talking, we're having fun, we're having normal conversations. You can go to the next page. And then number 2 takeaway from today is how to be a smart communication partner. And that is by doing what we tell parents to do. You may hear people talking to parents of young children, narrate what you're doing as you're doing it. Oh, I am cooking dinner, and we're using our communication device to say, I'm cooking dinner. Recasting is a term that's used a lot when we're talking about parentese or parent talk, which is how parents often talk to their children. Is if the kid points out the window and says, car, 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 a parent usually responds, yeah, that's a blue car. What you've seen is that they've added an element as they've recasted what they're saying. And we want you to apply that to the AAC device as well. So if a child is screaming to get your attention, just to get attention, right? Grab that communication device and just model a one button push, mom, and then give them the attention. I've modeled what you meant by that scream was to say, hey, mom, I need your attention. If they use their device and give you one word, Oreos, we can recast that by adding something extra. Yes, you can eat Oreos. I've put 2 things together. And then the other piece is just choosing once a day. This is hard. And I think it's important to acknowledge it's hard, it's new. And a lot of people get very overwhelmed by it. So I encourage parents to just choose once a day. I know we're totally out of time. I do have one more slide. Do I have one more slide? These are just resources, actually. So I'm going to let you use them at home. These are specific resources for activities that are available online to use at home based on certain communication systems. So if there are families in the audience whose kids are using, you're going to understand these words because your child's using this type of system. And if you don't understand the words, it's because your child's not using that type of system, and it's okay to ignore this slide for now. Oh.
Thank you, Katie.
I tried to get through a lot, and I'm happy to answer questions.
And a lot of people have been asking about training, and Yashira has been amazing and putting our link to our parent training groups in the chat several times.
Yeah, and I just want to get to some of those questions because I want to make space that at 8:15 that Kristin has her time also. And as a reminder to everyone, the meeting is being recorded. Once they do share their presentations with us, we'll be able to post them, and you'll be able to utilize the hyperlinks. And our speakers will put their contact information back in the chat again. So if you need to reach out to either one of them, you'll be able to have that opportunity also.
Roxy, can you either send me the chat or send me, if you've been writing down the questions, what I will also do is add the questions and the answers to the end of the PowerPoint when I send it.
Absolutely. So one question about Bookshare is they do ask for proof of the disability, and a parent is asking, do you know if an IEP would suffice that role?
It does, yes.
Thank you.
A letter from the doctor will work as well.
Okay. And the next question is, where does the burden lie with determining the accommodation? During the meetings, if the outside providers are recommending accommodations and further testing from the school specialist, the school says they need further testing from the hospital. So if the parent is getting bounced between go back to the hospital and get more recommendations, and the hospital saying, here are the recommendations the school should implement. So whose responsibility is that?
That's a really good question. It's a really good question. I think it's important distinction that for something to become the school's responsibility, it needs to be put into the IEP. So that's something where we need to have a meeting. If it's not at your IEP meeting time and there's a new thing that's been recommended, perhaps by someone at Children's, and you want that accommodation to be considered for school, you need to talk to your COS, I believe is what you call it. And
COS stands for Coordinator of Special Education Services for our.
Perfect. Thank you. And call another meeting to put that in. My report does not have any legal bearing on what the school does or doesn't do. They kind of, again, the goals being different, right? The school is legally bound to do what the child needs in order to access the curriculum. Again, our relationship with Boston Public assistive technology team has been really, really positive. We're I would say 98% of the time on the same page. And so that's been a good experience, but it's also important that we are able to talk to each other. We don't always know that there's disagreement, for example. But that's, from my end, that's what would have to happen. Now, we're not usually recommending, hey, you need to go to your school and get the school to buy something for you. Because we're family focused at Children's, usually our recommendation is also, say we want to recommend a communication device, for example, we may be recommending that you trial a communication device for consideration for your insurance to fund that device, as opposed to for the school to fund the device, if that makes sense. Then there's some collaboration that has to happen for the actual paperwork part. But if we're going for insurance and the school's not able to support the trial period and the paperwork part, that is something that we also can do at Children's.
Right, and I would say that, it's like any other discussion at the IEP meeting. If there's disagreement, there are other appeals rights our families have.
Absolutely.
What I was going to say,
mediation or different services. So your rights remain intact if these are things your child needs to access the curriculum, regardless of if one provider may not agree with it. You do have steps to go through higher. You can always reach out if you're concerned that you don't know what those are. Another question is about how do I get my child's Nova chat mentioned in the IEP or help with getting him to use it more? This family says they're connected with Boston Children's Waltham and wants to know how to get connected with your team, Katie. So could you also remember to, I think yours is up there, but also put it in the chat in case they can.
We did put it in the chat. I also sent a message to that parent about the language that would go in the IEP and said to email me and I can connect with the school team. But yes, we don't say the word Nova Chat, but we say insurance provided device or family provided device based on what the family would like written in there, but it is put in the IEP.
My email is in the chat. I'm not seeing that comment on here, but if that commenter needed to talk to the children's team, my email's in the chat and I can make sure you're connected with the right person.
Thank you. And I think the next one's similar to that top one. This one's asking about granular testing from the hospital, and if the hospital wants the school to be responsible for that. So I guess in this particular case, Aubrey, there's certain things you guys do as far as assistive technology because you're not a hospital.
Yep. And there's two ways that we can do it. One is through a full evaluation. Assistive technology is an option on the full IEP evaluation, and we can be added to that. We can also do it as a consultation where our team comes out and works with the student and makes any recommendations based on that. And any changes to the IEP can be made in either a consultation or an evaluation. I hope that answered that question.
Yeah, thank you. And the next one is for Dr. Ekstrom. Nadine, a question was asked in the chat about you clarifying your role as an advisor. Given the recent changes in the Office of Special Ed, families are inquiring about this. Are you the administrative head of the Office of Special Ed? Are you consulting with Dr. Caselius in the district? Should we, the family, send you emails with concerns or unresolved issues in lieu of Ethan? Should we still send them to Ethan? So clarification of your role, please.
Yes, sure. And I did put into the chat a little bit further, Roxy, so you'll see that. However, I am actually working with the special education department, and Ethan and I will be sending out a letter next week to families. I actually have one drafted. I'm just waiting for approval before it sends out to everyone. With some clarification of our roles. Ethan and I still work very closely together, and so that work will continue. However, his focus is mainly on the inclusion work that Boston Public Schools is trying to support. So he's going to stay mainly with inclusion, and I will be working mostly with all of the special education department. But further clarification will come out next week.
Thank you. We'll be looking forward to that communication. The next question also is about the trial, Aubrey. How long is the trial system in the school before it comes home with the child?
It varies. It's a team decision, and we present it to the IEP team. Our trials themselves are usually recommended to be about 6 to 8 weeks, but that doesn't exclude it going home during that time. It's up to the IEP team when the device goes home. We do usually like to introduce it for the first few times in school to make sure the student has an understanding of it and there isn't an increase in any maladaptive or negative behavior with it. But it's really a team decision about when it goes home. We just have a form that you sign that basically says you're going to charge it at night and send it back. And so that's a team decision, and there's no hard fast rule.
So it's individualized. Great, thank you. And I think she was able to address this by putting the link for the different parent trainings for the devices. So those who are looking for additional training, she did put that in the chat. This one's about a specific one. How much do you use Read Write Gold? It is a very robust literacy software that does not seem to be used properly by BPS. This is an example of software people do not know about.
So it is available in every school district, every school itself, to every student. And the company Text Help that puts it out does trainings as well. We've had them come to the schools and do trainings, but the trainings vary depending on the school and what the staff is looking for. We also go out to schools and do different trainings. I saw there was a question about parents getting trainings, and yes, we're working on that. We're trying to do a group like the AAC group for read and write for Google. But I agree that we're hoping to get it utilized more. It's a great tool. And they have great videos online about the different tools as well.
Thank you. And last question from the chat. What do you do for students studying STEM subjects?
That's a very good question. Students with print-based disabilities for math and science, the assistive technology is, it's not as good as I would like it to be. We have to be a little bit creative for our students who need this in math, and it's often a combination of a variety of different tools and accommodations in changing in what the teacher is doing.
Thank you. And if you both don't mind, just also as people are continuing with questions in the chat, addressing those regarding the delay with AT evaluations and things like that, anything you can answer in the chat also will be helpful. Next, I do want to give Kristin McSwain a chance to come and present. Sandy will share her screen. So if Aubrey, you start sharing so Sandy can share her screen and be able to begin that. Thank you both. That was really great information. So I am hearing one of our interpreters now on the English channel.
Roxy, I just wanted to add to our families that the events that were listed earlier are events that are back to back. So if families can't make it in the morning, there's an afternoon time. Please continue to provide feedback to the caregiver group so that we can support you best. And we will also include that on our website for families to be able to access those slide decks. Thank you.
Roxy, are you ready for me to go?
I am ready for you to go. Go for it.
Perfect. Well, first of all, thank you all for having me. And I want to say two things. One is for our interpreters, I do have a tendency to talk too fast. So if I start talking too fast, if someone could please let me know in the chat so that I can adjust my speed. The second is the reason I'm here tonight. My name is Kristin McSwain and I'm with the Boston Opportunity Agenda, is to get some feedback from you all on a new portrait of a graduate that the Boston Public Schools has been working on with the high schools. And I have a slide deck that I've put into the chat. So if you need to depart early or if you are more comfortable giving feedback in written form, instead of verbally, please feel free to use the Google Doc. And if you feel more comfortable entering your feedback in another language, please feel free to do that, and we will have it translated. And my apologies that the deck is actually only available in English, but you should be able to access it using the link that I put in the chat. So to start our conversation, in 2017, the city, the mayor's education cabinet and the Boston Opportunity Agenda, along with the Boston Public Schools and our charter schools and our Catholic schools, published what was called the College Career and Life Readiness Framework. And it was all about what students need to know and be able to do when they graduate in order to be ready for what they do in post-secondary, whether that is college or going straight to work or starting their own business or whatever it was that they were going to do in their life after high school. And we looked at this document a couple of months ago and realized it didn't reflect a lot of things that have happened in the last 5 years. It didn't reflect the pandemic. It didn't reflect our focus on social justice and all the different changes that have happened in our world. So the high school leaders have been working with a consultant to reframe this college career and life readiness framework into a vision of a graduate. This is their draft. And what I'd like to do tonight is walk you through it and see what in the language works, what you have questions about, what's missing, what you would like to see added. So that is what we're going to do now. So if we could go to the next slide, Sandy, that would be great. So once again, we've identified 5 different areas where students should be able to, from whatever their own personal vantage point is, to be able to demonstrate the following when they graduate. That they've built knowledge so that they're ready for college, career, and life. So when they move forward, do they know what they need to know in order to be successful wherever they go? The second one is that they are lifelong learners who know how to grow and explore. The third is that they understand themselves and others so that they can nurture relationships. The fourth is they adapt through changes and challenges to thrive. And the last is that they value diversity to harness the strengths and cultures of communities. So this is the proposed set of language for what young people should be able to do when they leave high school. And it's very general because each high school is going to use it to think about the different ways that they get their students ready for their life when they graduate. So what they do at the Dearborn in STEM might be very different than what they do at EMK around medical technology, which might be very different from what happens at the McKinley when students are prepared to leave high school. So each school will do something different, but this is in general what the district hopes a group of students would be able to do. So let's talk about the first one. Sandy, if you could advance to the next slide, that would be fantastic. And I'm gonna ask you all for some feedback on this language. So what it says is that Boston students have the academic knowledge to understand our diverse world. They can do hard academic work. They can, sorry, I'm having a little problem using my slides since Sandy is putting them up. Let's see if I can look at some. They reflect on their own strengths, experiences, and strategies to make sense of the world. They connect their learning to topics and problems that matter to them in their communities. Their practical money and technology know-how helps them to succeed. So this is the language that's underneath build knowledge. And what I'd love to know from the folks who are here is what in that language resonates with you? What do you like? What's difficult to understand? What might be missing? And you can either put that in the document or you can put it in the chat. I see that someone said that kids need to master math. I will definitely add that. But is there anything else that you all would like to comment on? And Roxy, are people able to come off mute?
They can raise their hand and we can ask them to unmute so they can.
Perfect.
If they raise their hand.
Does anyone have any thoughts about this particular? Linda, do you want to comment?
Yes, I'll comment.
Perfect.
When you're building knowledge to be ready for college, career, or life, if they have not mastered reading, writing, arithmetic, and other things, or technology, if you can't read, you can't do anything. If you can't do the math, you're in big trouble when it comes to working, doing little things, counting 2 plus 2, doing 1/3, 1/4 ratios, everything. Knowing what's a triangle, what's a square, what's a rectangle, just simple stuff. If they haven't even mastered any of that, they are definitely in major trouble. So those core things must be mastered at the lower grades. If they don't master them then, including vocabulary, they're going to have a more difficult time in 6th, 7th, and 8th. And as they get into high school, they're so far behind that even if they graduate, whatever pathway they take will not be as successful as they want.
Yes, I absolutely agree, Linda. And so what the process is is the district is working on this vision of graduate. They are then going to back map off that. What are the skills at each age level that students should know and be able to do, so that by the time they get to 12th grade, they've mastered the things that you just articulated. So thank you very much. Lori, did you have a comment?
In my order, the next one I'm asking to unmute is Linda, and then Lori will be next.
Oh, thank you. You know what, Roxy? I appreciate it.
Linda LaRouge, if you are available still, you're being asked to unmute.
Hello?
Yes.
I have a student that's in the Boston school system, and she would benefit from this plan. But when she takes the test for her IEP, it says she's very low in reading, math. She has nonverbal communication disability. She has ADHD. Does all inclusion classes need to have a paraprofessional?
Roxy, I'm going to leave that to you.
So I don't answer BPS questions when they develop their policies and procedures. I ensure that BPS answers their protocols of how they develop their classes. So if someone from BPS could put that in the chat, it's because that's staffing, right? That's how you develop an inclusion classroom in the chat. You can talk about that. But as far as saying about the attributes of the graduate, the actual student, of what that student would actually.
No, I'm not saying about the actual student. I'm just saying, how would you know if the student is ready for work or college by what she's doing with the IEP, or he is doing with the IEP, or what they have, if it's only minimum?
So ideally, it shouldn't be minimal, because the transition services, as you're developing the transition plan for the student. But the reason I bring it back to the graduate and the student is because around what Kristin's asking, it's like, let's talk about what, if let's say the transition team and everything does what they're supposed to, what skills would that student who may be going to college or need to learn life skills, what would they need to understand, have access to? What do they need to learn, so that we can talk about that components of, from the student perspective, getting them the skills when they graduate, they can be successful in life, in career, and what have you.
And I captured that, Roxy. I'm also, for those of you who've put things in the chat, I'm including that in the document that I'm capturing all the feedback in as well. Roxy, why don't we take the next couple of questions on this one, and then we do have a couple more slides, and I know that you all need to end on time.
You don't come to our meetings. That comment tells me you don't come to our meetings.
So we have a few more minutes, is what you're saying?
Edith Bazil, go right ahead.
Yeah, so I really like this, and thank you for sharing the slide deck, Kristin. The only thing that throws me off is when you use terms like hard academic work. If you tell someone it's hard, then it makes it seem that you have to put extra effort to do it. And I agree with Linda on major emphasis on literacy across the content areas, like in math, history, social studies, science. Literacy, if you can read, you can answer those complex questions, you know the vocabulary, and you can also have discussions, you understand content. So I would say the literacy is the piece that needs to really be emphasized. Thank you.
Thank you, Edith.
And well, Lisa, you're unmuted.
Hi, so Isabella, hi. So I'm fairly new to Boston Public School and working with a daughter who's also has a disability and has been picked on for her disability and is afraid literally to go to school. So I'm working with her on that. When I'm looking at this, I would want to see a broader population to be, I would like to see the diversity in the Boston Public School, because when I'm reading this, it seems as if there are diverse disabilities. Some are mental, some are physical, some depending on the child. And as a parent, what I'm looking forward working with a child who has a disability is knowing that she has the support in the public school system, but also to be grounded enough that to know that, okay, that doesn't make me any different from the average person, but how now will I be able to navigate the support in a college setting? And if that's not there, am I equipped, or do I have enough information to know that this is what I need in order to succeed in college? So I don't know if it makes sense.
No, it completely makes sense. And so this sort of bucket is about academic knowledge. And as we move down into the others, we begin to get into things like the sort of self navigational skills, the kinds of things that young people need to be their own agents when they move into what's next for them. So I've captured some of what you've said here, but I also think that some of what you're saying is that some of what you just said needs to go in some of these other places in because of the way they've bucketed the definitions. But I absolutely understand what you're saying. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I would appreciate if there was, I understand this has to cover a variety of children coming from a variety of schools, but I do think that there should be more, I guess, that the financial literacy aspect should be less vague than understanding practical money in order to, or practical money skills in order to succeed. I think that there are classes at most high schools that like economics that may not teach the skills that our kids need universally once they leave high school. Things like budgeting, things like doing taxes, other skills like that. I'm not sure if perhaps if those specific items weren't listed, that would be fine. But if there was at least some kind of indication that for whatever level your child is working at once they graduate high school, they would be able to have that skill. Perhaps your child won't be living independently, but they might know how to gather enough money to take the tea or to pay for their lunch or something like that. That's all.
Thank you very much. Sandy, can we go to the next slide? So the next slide is all about young people being lifelong learners to grow and explore. And so this is the set of skills that are more about active learning, critical thinking, problem solving, creativity. So what we've said here is that Boston graduates have a set of flexible skills that serve them in diverse career and community roles. They reflect on their own strengths, experiences, and strategies to make sense of problems and spark new ideas. Their curiosity and creativity push them to look below the surface of facts and feelings, and they continue to grow by connecting ideas and sources. So this is all about creating young people this desire to learn and the knowledge of how to learn when they leave high school. So I think, again, the perspective that you all are bringing is really important. So which of these attributes do you value the most? What is missing? Is there anything that is unclear or anything else that might need to be added here?
And once again, if you raise your hand, we can ask you to unmute or feel free to put it in the chat. Ms. Bazil, you'll be asked.
Sorry. So I think it's really important to cultivate the innate talents and abilities that students have, because schools don't create those abilities. Students come to school with them. And how do you cultivate and nurture the intellect, the potential and as well as the interest of students, because that's what helps them to become lifelong learners, because you take those abilities and then you help them to navigate the world of whether it's taking a course or pursuing a career. So their innate abilities are already there, and they have to be, so the knowledge is not put into them. It's a way for them to access the knowledge that the skill set that they already have. So I don't know.
So
I don't know if that makes
capturing
sense.
that in some way, Edith, is what I hear you saying, like capturing that we need to be cultivating what young people are already bringing right here.
So like, for example, my daughter has autism, but she has so many innate skills and abilities, but all you see is her autism. And so you gravitate towards that, and you're it then really needs to be a strength base that the student already brings. Like what do they know already? What talents do they have? And how do you bring out their musical talents?
Thank you, Ms. Brazil.
All that, yeah.
Thank you.
Ali, I'll give you a chance because I want to be mindful of our interpreters. You do have to leave too, so we want to just get a couple of points and go from there. Ali, you're unmuted.
Yes, I just wanted to see if there is a possibility of adding something around appreciating opposing ideas or flexible thinking. I think definitely with everything that has been going on these past few years, and then also with children like mine on the spectrum, that's a skill that would benefit a variety of children.
Thank you. I captured that. And since we do want to make sure that we keep our interpreters for a little bit, can we go to the next one, Sandy? Because I think we get at some of what we've been talking about in this next one, which is that graduates understand themselves and others to nurture relationships. So we know that they know they need to have a set of healthy, diverse relationships. They figure out who's in their corner and they build their network of supporters and allies. They understand themselves and how people impact each other's and their communities. They see relationships as a give and take. They can advocate for their needs and also be accountable to others as they work through challenging situations. And so here we see things like collaboration, communication, conflict resolution, advocacy, and others. So are there any thoughts about what might be missing on this slide or what would be important to highlight?
Again, if you want to add anything, just raise your hand and we'll unmute you. There we go. Go ahead, Walisa.
Hi, not trying to be difficult. It's just because I'm thinking actually of my daughter. What happens to the child who actually is an introvert and does better learning alone? So she's a smart kid, but I guess her difficulty is more of collaborating with people. Like if I'm home, I'm doing my homework, I'm fine. When it comes to talking to people, I freeze.
So I think I hear you saying that we know those skills are things we want for our students, but they're going to display them in their own ways when they graduate high school. Is that correct?
You're still muted. You're muted, Walisa.
I'm sorry. We are building them for the future, and she is a high school student. I'm hoping she could start soon, but she's also a bright child who, as I'm finding out now, is when she's by herself, she excels. But when it comes to collaboration, she freezes. So I agree with the skills that are needed, collaboration, communication, but I'm also thinking about the loner who I do better by myself. Mm-hmm. However, I may have to reach out to people to do the work. Even in college, you're going to have projects where you have to sit with people. So this is more what I was thinking of, like, as I'm reading this.
just to add to that, I think we're obviously you think about collaboration, you're looking at multiple people working together, but for a child like yours, that could look like maybe just through emails. You know how to communicate with the right people, so it's not going to look the same across the board, but you're still collaborating in your own way.
And Lori, you're also unmuted.
I would like to know how you guys assess if a child will get a high school diploma or not. Because I heard if they do not pass the MCAS, no matter what level their IEP or 504 is on, they will only get a certificate of attending school.
So you're not incorrect. So that is a longer conversation. And Kristin, I want to be clear, doesn't work for BPS directly. So, like any of the other people in BPS can definitely answer that in the chat. She's doing a contract with a profile of a BPS student for them, but that is something we've been discussing, and it's a longer conversation regarding certificates of attendance versus high school diplomas.
Yes, so if my child has a 504, other people's children have a 504 or an IEP, what's the sense of sending them to school to learn any skills if they're not going to get a high school diploma, if they're willing to, if they can comprehend and go to a
So Lori, I'm going to recommend, I muted you because I want to focus, because I'm going to recommend that be part of the advocacy and talking more with the Office of Special Ed, because it's not good, that conversation here right now, we're not going to be able to do something with it right now. So, but definitely we want to come back around to it and have a bigger conversation, because it's something that multiple families care about. So feel free to continue to put things in the chat, or if there's another question, I'm sorry, I had to step away for a moment.
So Roxy, there's two more attributes of the graduate. Do we want to just let folks put feedback in the Google chat, or should we finish? I know we're over your time and I don't know your procedures.
So if you want to just tell them what they are, and that way if anyone has anything pressing, they can throw it right in the chat right now.
Sure. So the last two, and Sandy, thank you for advancing the slide. The next one is that young people can adapt through changes and challenges to thrive. So they know that rough draft thinking is expected. They see that you gain skill and confidence with practice. They persist and adjust when changes are necessary, and they work through setbacks. So that's the one around adapting through changes and challenges. And then the last one, and Sandy, we can advance to the next slide, is that they value diversity to harness the strengths of cultures and communities. So they value diversity, they find strength in their own identity and value what others bring. They know that differences in race, ethnicity, language, ability, and culture are assets. And those skills and attitudes help graduates to navigate complex systems. So those are the last two. And you can either put your comments in the chat, or you can put your comments directly in the Google document.
And I would just ask Kristin if you can once again put your contact information in the chat. So, because sometimes you think about something and then you want to just share it, so they can reach out directly to you and share additional thoughts about the profile, the attributes of a graduate student. Of a high school.
We'll also send over the chat responses that are coming in about the slides. We'll send those over to you.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for your feedback and for your time. And I'm sorry that I took a little bit longer than we planned.
Not a problem.
Thank you all for tonight. We really appreciate our interpreters, our BPS staff, and everyone who's come out tonight, and all the speakers. It is always good to know that individuals are also taking in the perspectives of our students with diverse disabilities and abilities. And whenever any decision is made within BPS or anything with the graduation or anything like that. So thank you all for coming out tonight. If you get a chance, please fill out our exit survey that's been put in the chat a couple of times also. Charlie, if you can throw that in the exit survey back in the chat again, that'd be great. And I just want to wish everyone a great night, and thank you so much. And we will see you next month. Reach out if there's any concerns. The recording will be posted probably by next week, along with any handouts that our speakers have shared with us, so you can reach out to them and gather additional information. So good night, all. Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Sleep well.